when people say to me, what do I do as a career consultant? I guess I help people have better conversations about their careers, about change. Often it's conversation with teams and more often with organizations about how we can simply have better conversations about our careers. They say life is complex and difficult and that we're looking for answers to make things perhaps more tangible, more workable, and I hope that I can do that for you in a short space of time. I thought I would start with a quotation. I feel like I have got to the age in life where I can quote myself, so that's kind of what I've done. I really do believe that work is an important part of our lives. I do think it is part of who we are and what we do. I think it's an important part of making a contribution. It's an important part of meeting people, of feeling that our life on earth has been worthwhile. And so I'm finding many people that are reaching midlife and saying, I'm successful, I'm well qualified, I'm doing things that make a difference, but this is not doing it for me. And so we're finding a lot of people reaching midlife or doing MBAs or whatever, and then saying, so what does this mean? And how can I do something different? So I have two questions for you today. Number one is, how many of you are busy with studies at the USB because you have some kind of career transition, career change, business down the track that you want to start? In other words, this is part of your own transition plan. How many would that apply to? Okay, that's a pretty good show. Second question would be, how many of you have clarity about what exactly that is? How many of you have clarity about what that is? In other words, if we said, Tuesday is D-Day, give us your plan so we can help you with it. There's kind of one half hand. Okay, there may be two. And that's not unusual. We do a lot of work at the Graduate School of UCT as well, and I must tell you that even in groups of 90 MBAs that come in each year, there probably are 3 or 4 hands about clarity. So I thought that I would tell you a couple of things today about careers. And I thought there probably are 3 key questions that might be helpful for you to ask. The one is, how do you job hunt in the current environment or in any environment? Secondly, how do you discover what you really want to do with your career and really discover that? And I think the third part of that is, what has changed in the world of work and what does that mean for all of us now? How do we react to that differently? Certainly a lot of the work that I do in the corporate life is about large-scale retrenchments, with people that are suddenly faced with complete change in organizational structure, people needing to start careers again in their 40s and 50s, people needing to start businesses. So it's not unusual that we're needing to work in that space. And I thought the third question would be around, so what are those changes and how do we work with them? Let's talk about job hunting. Job hunting doesn't mean that you're running down Adley Street with a CV looking for a job. Job hunting is any activity that says I'm looking for a role that I'm not already in. So job hunting could be inside of the organization you're in. It could be looking for a different organization. It could also be, if you're in a consulting role, is looking for other people who need what you do. I've often said that the only difference between employed by an organization or being employed by yourself is the number of employers you have. So if you are self-employed, it means that you're going to need 12, 15 different employers, that some employ you for an hour, some for a day, some for a week. So job hunting is a job on itself. In fact, we've often said that if somebody really wants to job hunt consistently, you're going to need some time out to do that. When we look at the way jobs are working in the current job market, if you look at all the jobs that are out there at any one time, and that's the circle on the right, only about 15% of jobs ever hit what we call the open market. The open market means the internet, job ads, even online. And it certainly means the number of advertisements that you'll find in the newspapers. What that means, of course, is that 85% of jobs that we want are in fact not advertised. They're through networks, they're through people who know people, they're inside of organizations, they're through MBA groups, they're through networking groups, they're through whatever other associations you have with people that know you and people that want to employ you. The other thing, that when you look at people looking for jobs, about 95% of people are using traditional methods. That means they're drawing up CVs, they're looking at ads in the paper, they may be accessing them through online job ads. It means, of course, that 95% of people are looking for 15% of jobs. And what we're often hearing somebody say is there aren't jobs, or there aren't jobs for people of my profile, or there aren't jobs for people over 50, which would include me. So there's a space about needing to change the way we think about job hunting. Now, one of my gurus in the world is a man called Richard Bowles. He's the author of a book called What Color's Your Parachute, which has been the best-selling book in the world for over 30 years. And it's really about job hunting. And he's devised a most wonderful upside-down job hunting model of how employers look for fill vacancies, in other words, look for employees of any kind, and how people job hunt. Now, the most popular way that employers typically fill vacancies is from within. Within doesn't mean you're in the organization, but it does mean that you're a known quantity. You could be an ex-employee, you could be a consultant, you could have done a short-term projects, you could be someone that may have done your MBA project as part of a company's growth. But you're part of that low risk, low cost. I've seen them before, know what they do, know they pitch on time, know they don't take cash out of the register. So people I'd like to work with. When that doesn't work, employers would then often employ people who approach them, people who walk in the door and say, this is what I do. I'm a consulting, I work with IT, I develop strategy, do you need someone like me? And as you know, the whole business market is driven by people that go out looking for the work they want, whether we're talking insurance companies, business development, or consulting in any form. When that doesn't work, the third thing that employers would do is then typically hit the network. And that's what we do. Who do you know that knows someone who knows someone that does that? When you move to a new town, can you recommend a good dentist? Have you got a good tax consultant that I can use? Do you have an accountant we could use? So because of this whole move towards how job gets filled, you can see why 85% of jobs are filled without going through formal channels. They're simply using who do we know, who have we met, and who can we use. After that, of course, would come agencies, and as you know, an agency comes with a cost, but it also comes with the responsibility of an employer to then work through many CVs and say, I'm still going to take a risk, but which one is going to be the lowest risk for me? Many employers would also put ads in the paper on their own without agencies. That obviously creates its own administrative burden. The least favored way that employers fill vacancies is through unsolicited CVs. And we see many people floating the market with CVs hoping that somebody wants to read them. What's interesting is that I was invited for lunch last week by someone, and I got there and I said, shall I briefly just tell you what I do? And they said, oh no, we've seen what you do. There's so many ways to find that out, anywhere from LinkedIn to what was on other pages to what's on your website. And so our CV's out there anyway, in many ways, before we arrive with a piece of paper. So what we're doing around CVs is that certainly you need a CV. But if you really wanted to job hunt, you've got to define quite clearly what you want to do. You've got to define quite clearly the employers that you want to work for. And you've got to find connections to have conversations with them about whether they need someone like you. I've often said that the only purpose of a CV is to get yourself a conversation with someone that might need you down the track. Because the job market is quite slow at the moment, it may not be an instant hiring. It may take a year for someone to need what you do. But people leave, people die, people walk out in a huff on Friday afternoon. So because a position isn't open now, doesn't mean it's not going to be down the road. The second question that I thought maybe raising is, how do you decide what you really want to do? The one thing that's quite problematic about that, and I'll take you back to the heart that I had on the previous slide. There we go. Is that when we look at job titles in the workplace, they become overwhelming. In fact, if there's a dictionary of occupational titles that has about 20,000 jobs in them, but it's old. So as we've started to create new jobs, as we've merged fields, that's 40,000, and maybe we're up to 60,000 or more job titles. So if you say to someone, what do you want to do? It doesn't say, what is your job title? You also know that 5 job titles that are the same have different pressures, different people, different requirements. You might also have 5 different ones that are essentially the same job. So the way we work with discovering what a career looks like is to realize that a career has an anatomy. It really has a shape, and you can start to work with it. And the left side of the heart is an important question, because the question isn't, what do you want to be? What do you want to study? What corner office do you want? It's, what do you love doing? What are the things that really give you energy? What are the things that you lose track of time when you're busy with? What are the things that even if someone didn't pay you to do, you'd be doing? And there's a kind of a law that you can't suppress your real skills. If you're not using them in the workplace, you'll be using them in hobbies. If you're not using them there, you'll be coaching friends in your spare time, simply because it gives you energy to do that work. Now, what that means, of course, is letting go of some fondly held career dreams that you might have had early in your life. We work with many people that would say, and my question to them would be, what do you want to do with your career? And they say, well, I'm a CA. So what do you want to do? Well, I'm a CA, like it's a personality type. And so that, we simply, that means there aren't any other alternatives. Now, a CA is not a career, it's simply a qualification. And I think where we get stuck with is that because I studied something, my undergrad studies were law, bored the life out of me, still does, so I don't practice that. But it simply means that I've learned something, but it doesn't mean that's what I do. So when you start looking at doing, you're looking at, do I like developing strategy, working with people, developing, mentoring, coaching people, making things with my hands, putting out buildings, doing statistical analysis. There are people that actually love doing that. It's not me, but some do. There are people also that will sit up till 4 o'clock in the morning to balance something to the last 3 cents, and they'll kind of have a whoopee moment when they get it. I'll write that off at 11 o'clock thinking, come, let's move on. There are other things to do, but I would be a disaster in an administrative financial environment. Imagine what that could look like. So the do well and love doing is beginning to unpack, what have I noticed? I was in a lovely workshop in the States last year where the theme was, it's not what you see, it's what you notice. And part of working with skills is starting to notice what you do well, starting to notice what comes naturally, starting to notice where you lose track of time, starting to notice where you make an impact that is bigger than what you remember putting into it. And somebody says, wow, that was amazing, and you're thinking, which bit? Was I there? The other side of the heart looks at different stuff because, the bottom side is about the field we work in. Now, old career theory says that our interests define a lot of our careers. Now, they may well give us a lot of guidance. But what an interest does is typically define the field you want to work in. It could be that you want to work in greening the environment. It may mean that you want to work in a legal field or in a financial field or in a building field. And there are as many fields as there are categories in the yellow pages or on Google. They're simply all fields of interest. But what you do in that particular field could mean anything. So we hear someone saying, I'm fascinated by cars, but I'm not mechanical. It simply means that in cars there are people that are financial directors, people that do writing, people who are in publishing, people that do TV programs in Top Gear. They've simply made a career in a field of cars, but it's not a mechanical career. It's simply a financial career in a field that gives them energy and is a whole lot more fun than walking into a company where they do accounting systems where you hope that you wouldn't have to arrive another day. The top area is called peripheral conditions, and obviously there are many of them. Moving from, and the peripheral conditions are really the conditions that give us the most energy to be most productive. There are people who have preferences about where they work in the world. For other people, there are preferences about the physical environment. For other people, it's about working conditions. For others, it's about the culture of the organization. And so often I'm speaking to executives who are doing the right things. They're in the right field. Their qualifications are working for them. They simply hate their jobs. They don't like the people they work with. They don't like the environment. They don't like the rules. They don't like the conditions. They don't like the fact that they spend 5 weeks, a time away in an airport. So a lot of peripheral conditions, as you begin to job hunt, is to work out, if I had to meet an employer or somebody phoned me at 2:30 in the morning and said, what do you really want to do? Can you verbalize, this is what I do well and would like to do for you as an organization? Whether that's developing strategy, putting systems in place, doing analysis, designing information technology systems, it's simply a question. The other is deciding what field do I want to be in, because that's going to define where you go job hunting. If you simply float the market with a CV, you're hoping that a couple of employers out there have a crystal ball to guess, first of all, that you're there, and secondly, when they do find you, what it is you want to do for them. And to give them a CV simply doesn't give a lot of information. In fact, if I can, the liberty of being rude about CVs for a minute or two. If you look at the average CV that employers do receive, bearing in mind that 99% of them go straight into the bin, and that's from all my colleagues in HR around the country. But assuming you had nothing else to do and you see a brown envelope that looks flat and looks like it might be fascinating, if you pull it out of the envelope, it typically has a picture on the right-hand corner or a scroll or some other piece of art. Then it has on the front page all the basic information, like all your names. Your Joanna, your Kuba, Wilhelmina, Ermina. They're all like a christening. It's got people's ID numbers for numerologists. It's got addresses to deliver gifts. It's got things like health status, like a medical aid application. It's even got people's driver's license for an administrative position on the 13th floor. So the front page of a CV, I think, is always good enough to check into a hospital with a heart attack. Just put your medical aid number on the front page. Then they give you a history of what they've done since 1939 to 1948, plus all the job duties. Then 1938 to 1959, Shell Company, what we did. On the last page, you hope for a bit of interest, and it would normally give interests and special achievements, like netball captain 1948 and interests like reading and hiking and Seven Dalan, whatever happens to be on your list. And we wonder why they don't have any impact, because they simply don't tell us what it is you're looking for, what you're good at, how you want to make a contribution. And so what we're working with a whole lot more is that when you have something to offer the marketplace, you better know what that is. The market is too flat, it's too fickle, it's too difficult to get jobs in the current market if you simply hope that somebody can read your mind. And so we have somebody coming to and saying, well, I'm looking for a position. What are you looking for? Oh, well, you know, anything financial or administrative. So what exactly do you mean by that? Ach no, if there's paper, it's me. Or even worse, I'm a people's person, and you're thinking, waar gaat ons nou? It's simply not giving me information that I can work with. And then they're saying they're having difficulty in the job market. So I think the second question for me is if you can begin to start to understand that. And clearly we all have, there are a lot of assessments that you can also do about your own personality shift or your personality shape and the things that would work better for you. But it doesn't absolve you from the responsibility to still sit down and say, this is what I can do for you. So even if you have a clear idea of what your strengths are, you can't say to an employer, you know, I'm really persistent, I'm really patient, and I get on well with people. Because there still has to be a trade-off between this is what I pay, and hopefully it's well, and this is what I can do for you in return for that, if that makes sense. The third thing that I wanted to chat to you about is just the changes in the workplace. Many of you may have read work by William Bridges. William Bridges wrote books about transition. He also wrote a wonderful book called Job Shift, where he talks about that we're in the second great job shift of the world. The first job shift was where people used to live on farms. People were self-employed. You know, typically you had the shop downstairs and the flat upstairs, or people lived on farms. And then the first job shift was Industrial Revolution, into the place where people had jobs. We gave jobs names, we gave them titles, and we now have organizations built around the concept of a job. We're now in the second great job shift of the world, where companies are de-jobbing, organizations are getting flatter, outsourcing is doubling, apparently every 2 years in South Africa. The size of contracting staff inside of organizations is vast. So we're suddenly in a place where job for life is no longer safe. In fact, it isn't in Japan anymore than it is in South Africa. Even the largest organizations, that apparently was safe. I grew up in, you know, well, I guess kind of 30 years back, when my grandparents were saying, if you want a good career, then you find one that has a good security, a good pension, good medical aid, either get into the public service or the insurance industry, or join a bank. Now, I have to tell you that 80% of my work around retrenchments has been in those three areas the last couple of years. So there isn't a safe place around that. So as I look at organizations now, when we were doing retrenchments 10 years back, we were using labor consultants. Any HR department now that can read can simply follow the steps in the LRA. It's not difficult to do. So it's become a standard part of life, the fact that people are losing jobs. But we still haven't quite learned to help people take charge of that and to work out what they're going to do now. Some of the other things that I thought were useful is that people are having many more careers and employment relationships in their life. That doesn't mean that you may work through 4 or 5 organizations, but one of the things we've been working with the MBAs on is that you can also have 5 business cards. It doesn't mean that because you only do one thing that you can't do 4 others. So you may be involved in consulting, you may be change. If I look at my own particular career, I have 1 printed card, but I have 5 different cards in terms of what I do. I do a lot of career decision-making work with organizations. I do a lot of change work around strategy, a lot of behavior work around culture shift in organizations, a lot of work with teams that are simply needing to unpack what is this politic and where are we going and how is it going to work for us. So they're different cards, and yours don't have to be, you know, as aligned maybe as mine might seem to be. It doesn't mean that you can't do more things. So we're seeing more of that. Careers are also more lateral and cyclical because there simply are 7 ways other than up, 15 ways other than up. And as we're looking at organizations going through restructuring, we're helping people unpack maybe 15 different alternatives of what they could be doing in the organization, as opposed to this job is gone and the one above me is blocked. How do I work with that? Also more than 1 employer, 5 business cards, second great job shift. I thought that I would just mention to you 3, I guess, keys for survival that William Bridges suggested, and we have others too. The one is what he calls employability. And you've heard Clem Sunter say the same thing. that the new job security is about being employable. That means, do you have the skills and the attitudes that employers want? And it's interesting that a lot of the work that we do, we run a program over 4 days on assertiveness in the workplace, of how what used to be a soft skill has become a hard skill. People who are proactive, people that can think for themselves, people who are self-propelled, people who can collaborate, people who can communicate are in high demand. People who have EQ, that can think for themselves, manage their own emotions, manage their own behavior, are highly marketable in the work marketplace. And I've heard many more top execs say to us in organizations, if we can find people who have the right orientation towards life and towards work, we can teach them what we do. We can buy skills more cheaply than we can buy people that have developed kind of emotional wholeness. So employability is, do you have what people need? And can you work with that? The second key for survival is vendor-mindedness. In other words, can you start to think like a vendor? Can you take charge of the fact that people can't read your mind, that whether you're inside an organization or outside of an organization, you have to make a call that this is who I am, this is what I want, and you've got to market yourself inside the organization. Even when organizations, and I work primarily with corporations, advertise positions, there's already a group of people that are kind of contenders for that position, or people that have been earmarked, or through a whole range of talent management processes are kind of up for scrutiny or for grabs. So you've got to market yourself inside organizations. If you want to market yourself outside of the organization, you're going to need to create some networks and to be able to do that. The third is about resilience. I guess one of the things that we spend a lot of time working in organizations with are ideas around change. And resilience is the ability that you have to bend without breaking, to work with change as opposed to against it. It also means to find your security from within, as opposed to expecting someone else to say, here it is, it's okay, we'll look after you, because that's no longer possible. So resilience is about, do I have what it takes to survive quite a lot of turmoil in the workplace? Do I have the resilience to deal with a lot of change in my organization? But more importantly, have I got the skills to manage the resilience to take myself through the number of career changes that I need? Perhaps one thing about that I need to say is that our old paradigm of work is that, we lived in 3 boxes. We got into a learning box from age 6 to about 26, or as soon as you could get out. Then we jump into a work box and we so-called work ourselves to death, and then we reach 60 or 65, whatever the magical age is, and we jump into the play box. And as you know, many people die in the play box within about 2 years. So life work planning is about how do you put those boxes together? How do you make sure that you have a life that is continual learning? How do you find where your work is part of play and work is part of your life? How do you do that? So as we start to work with that kind of resilience change space, we realize that our careers now are going to be managing change throughout our whole lives. The insurers now tell us that our new life expectancy is 106. So if you're in your early 50s like me, it would suggest that we're only halfway. There's also, there's a lovely book by William Bridges called, sorry, not William Bridges, Bob Buford, called Halftime. And he says that life is like a soccer game, that the first half of life is about success. It's getting the credentials, getting the corner office, the parking bay, whatever happened to be on your list. And then we reach a halftime space where it says, I'm now looking for significance, what I want to do with the rest of my life. And we're seeing people in their 40s and 50s that you can hear the conversation. It says, here comes a midlifer who says, I'm just looking for more meaning. I want to make more of a difference. I want to make sure that what I do leaves a legacy. I want to make sure that I can do things into my 60s and 70s that really make a difference. How do I do that? So we're watching people in their mid-50s making some of their best career decisions ever. I had a call from a gentleman who's just over 70 who said the genetics in his family are they all live to about 95. So he says, I've got another 25 years. And I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to do with that from a work point of view, not because I need an income, but because I want to make a difference, because I want to be engaged, because I want to read and learn, and I want to have more fun, and I want to give back things, and I want to make sure that my life has a purpose. So I think what's happened with careers is that what we used to make a decision at between 19 and 21, I think very few of us made real decisions then. We simply made study decisions, but we didn't make career decisions. And so, again, we need to ask new questions like, what do I want to do? You may also find that what you want to do in your 20s isn't what you want to do in your 30s, and may not be what you want to do in your 50s. So it never goes away. It in fact looks for new ways of making new decisions. And we're hoping that a lot of the conversations that we can help you with are about checking in where you are now and saying, what have I learned? Where have I been? What can I take from that? What have I noticed about that? What have I learned from that? And therefore, if I want to make contribution going forward, what is that? And where is that specifically? As in, I want to be in this field, in this geographic area, with these kind of conditions, with these kind of people. Where would I find them? And how would I get a conversation with them to let them know that I'm here? What I find a lot in the general workplace amongst really, really talented people is they are so good and so excited about what they do, but no one knows they're there. They're simply invisible to the job market. And so for me, that kind of comes back to where I started today, was that if you don't have a strategy for job hunting, you might remain invisible. If you simply post out CVs and hope that someone's waiting for them, the chances are they're not. If you're not networking in areas that you want to get into, then that network simply doesn't understand that you're there, and even less understand what you want from them. I've been working with Natandi, and we're going to be doing two things over the next year that may be interesting for you. One is we're going to be running a one-day workshop for students at the USB.
On Saturday.
It'll be on a Saturday, which is good news, I hope. I hope. And the whole day is going to be around creating some really conversations that you can have around, how do I discover skills? How do I discover fields? How do I develop a job hunting strategy? It'll be highly practical, full of conversations. It won't be a talk show from me. The other thing we're going to be doing is putting on a more public workshop. So for all the people that aren't students at the USB, that may all be in career change, and certainly the circles I move in, I'm finding that more people are in career change that aren't. We're all grappling with the workplace. Some people are needing to find jobs. Other people are simply wanting to do something that's more fun or pays more, or is more useful for them. Have you got any questions for me? This has been quite low flying, but I hope to provide you some kind of landscape that may merely confirm for you that you're normal. And secondly, maybe a comfort level that there actually is a system. When I got to my 30s and 40s in corporate workplace, I kept thinking, isn't there some way to do this? It always seemed to be kind of a hit and miss system. And in fact, my thesis, I was at the USB too, so I'm one of your alums, is my thesis was looking for the best decision-making models around the world and finding people that had found a way to work with us so that it was practical. I'm intensely practical, so if I can't find a way to make it work, then I don't just want a wishy-washy conversation about contribution. I want to know what is it, and how do we work it out, and how can we do that?